Okay. To question number 2. Making sure it's recording. Okay, good. Isaiah 9, 6-8. Okay. In Isaiah 9, at least in the NIV, I know that the Jewish Bible breaks up the chapters a little differently, and I'm not going to worry too much about that, but Isaiah 9:1, nevertheless there will be no more gloom for those who were in distress. In the past he humbled the land of Zebulun, the land of Naphtali. But in the future he will honor Galilee of the Gentiles by the way of the sea along the Jordan. The people walking in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of the shadow of death, a light has dawned. Arguably, because I know that you think that this again is about JC, arguably it could fit that at that time you had the Roman Empire who were in the land, and clearly you could say that they were living in the land of the shadow of death, and that when JC showed up, a light has dawned. You have enlarged the nation and increased their joy. They rejoice before you as the people rejoice at the harvest, as men rejoice when dividing the plunder. Okay, that then doesn't fit, because they weren't rejoicing. The entire time, throughout the whole life of JC, there was no rejoicing. They weren't rejoicing that he was there. They weren't rejoicing about anything. They weren't looking at dividing any plunder. There was no harvest as such. They may have been hopeful that one would have taken place, hopeful that this would have happened, but that didn't happen. For as in the days of Midian's defeat, you have shattered the yoke that burdens them, the bar across their shoulders, the rod of their oppressor. That did not happen. Midian, remember the whole story, I think, of Gideon, that Gideon, got these guys together to defeat the enemy of the people of Israel. And, they broke the lanterns and shouted, and in all the confusion they were able to defeat this great army. So, for as in the days of Midian's defeat, you have shattered the yoke that burdens them. Well, the yoke of the Romans was not broken by JC, wasn't broken by the Christians, and continued for years to come. Every warrior's boot used in battle and every garment rolled in blood will be destined for burning, will be fuel for the fire. For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful, Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. And this is the point that you want me to tell you who that child is. Now, I know that there is an interpretation on that, but from this text, if you are trying to connect it to JC, I don't see how it fits. I mean, look, let's be realistic here. The New Testament was not a part of the compilation of the Bible. It was an addition to the Hebrew Scriptures. The Hebrew Scriptures were, for all intents and purposes, and I sometimes struggle with using the right words because it seems that some people, about 200 years before JC shows up, it seems that there was a general consensus about which books were a part of the Hebrew canon. Not that there weren't other Jewish writings there, but the books that we presently see in the Tanakh, in the Torah, the Ketuvim, and the Nevi'im, the prophets, these were by and large accepted by the time JC shows up on the scene. And the New Testament writings weren't really brought in for many, many, many years later, hundreds of years later, actually, because even at that time when I think it was under Constantine. I understand that the bulk of those books, there was an acceptance on a large number of them, but there were still groups that were arguing about which books in the New Testament should be accepted and which shouldn't. In fact, even Martin Luther he had a problem with the book of James, and that was back only 500 years ago. So my point is that the New Testament gets added on later on, almost as we got a theory. We think that this guy was the Messiah, even though he died, but we think he was resurrected and ascended. And in spite of the fact that the prophecies that the Jewish people are looking for did not come to pass, and in spite of the fact that there was no redemption, there was no liberation from Rome, there was none of the things that they were anticipating that would have actually been useful and beneficial to them, in spite of that, we've got this document, and it's kind of like somebody who has a source document and then writes a test, and then the answers to the test are really fall within the opinion of the writers of the test, right? It's kind of like we made up the test, and these are the answers that we think are the right answers to the test, but we find the answers in the test, not in the source documents that the test is about. There is that kind of split between the Hebrew Scriptures and the New Testament that is, I think, fairly evident. In other words, here's my point. You can't go to the New Testament and say that because the New Testament says that it fulfilled a prophecy, you can't then say that that's a proof. It's not a proof. It merely proves that the New Testament believes that that's a fulfillment of the prophecy, but it isn't a proof that it's a fulfillment of the prophecy. That'd be like me saying, well, I saw your dad the other day, and then you say, well, how can you prove that you saw my dad? Well, your dad, he's got two eyes and a nose and a mouth, right? And it's like, well, yeah. Well, there's the evidence. That's not evidence at all. You wouldn't think of that as any kind of evidence. And this is the same kind of proof that the New Testament offers. It says, well, this fulfilled, for unto us a child is born, and you say that's a fulfillment. That's not a fulfillment. It's just them saying that they believe that it's a fulfillment, but that's not a fulfillment. Here's the deal. In Isaiah 9:7 it says, of the increase of his government and peace there will be no end. I'm sorry. You honestly want me to believe that the child in Isaiah 9 who was supposed to bring in peace is a reference to JC, and that peace would never end? What history are you reading? What books are you reading that tell you that for the last 2,000 years there has been this reign of peace? Because it says that this reign of peace, there would be no end. And please don't tell me about some kind of internalized salvation peace, because not only was I a Christian for many years, I know many Christians for many years, and when things are going well, yes, there's peace, and when things aren't going well, for many of them it falls apart. Now, I'm not blaming Christianity on the fact that their peace falls apart when trouble comes, because I can see people who aren't Christians who, when trouble comes, they remain stable, they don't fret, they don't fall apart. So it's not because of their religion that they either stay together or fall apart. It's simply a matter that there are some people that handle those things better. There are some people who can remain at peace through many things, and there are others who can't. But you can't point to their religion and say that their religion or their belief, their faith in JC is directly attributed or can directly be tied to their behavior. It goes on, he will reign on David's throne and over his kingdom. Well, the kingdom of David was the kingdom of Israel, was Jerusalem. And JC never did that. So clearly, this child that you're reading about here, if you're saying that JC fulfilled those things, he did not fulfill those things.